Hello and welcome to Bloke on the Range. Now, about a week ago, I was invited to a practical rifle training up in the mountains on a military range. Unfortunately, because military range, we weren't allowed to film, but I took, alongside my M16, I took Frankenrifle and my rig that I was going to run in Finnish Brutality to see how that might have gone. Now, I let the event organizer have a run through a two-gun stage with Frankenrifle, and he'd actually never fired a bolt-action rifle before, aside from about 5 or 6 rounds on a K31 on a static range. So he asked me to just give him a rundown of how to do it from first principles. Now, for someone who's been shooting Lee-Enfields fast since he was 19, so about 20 years ago, a lot of it to me is just muscle memory, and I don't have to think about it anymore. So it was quite an interesting exercise for me to have to explain it to someone from first principles and actually think about what I'm doing so that I can pass this knowledge on to someone who described himself as a lazy semi-automatic shooter, which I thought was a good term. So what I think I'm going to do is, given that I've done this mental exercise once live out on the range, I'm going to bring the camera up and we're going to talk about it so that maybe some other people who want to learn to shoot rifles fast can also benefit from it. So just as a little reminder, this particular rifle is known as Frankenrifle on the channel. It's an Australian International Arms M10A1, so no actual Lee-Enfields were harmed in its production. It fires 7.62x39. It takes AK mags, empty, see? And it's basically a chunky number 4 type action with a few modernizations, like it's got a plunger ejector, so it's a bit modernized, but basically its operational geometry and everything is the same as a Lee-Enfield. And frankly, for going fast with a turn bolt, aside from some very special things, and we've got one coming up on the channel soon, you can't really do an awful lot better than this, particularly with a large mag. Now, there's going to be a lot of dry firing in this video, so any dry fire snowflakes might like to look away now, but these are robust rifles. I've never seen one break a firing pin or anything from dry firing. These Lee-Enfield type rifles were dry fired incessantly in service over many, many decades, and there's no problem reported. So anyway, now that's over, the basic thing is when you're shooting fast, your marksmanship principles have to be good. You just do everything a bit faster. Now, in terms of operating the bolt, all the training pamphlets from the British Army for these say that the bolt handle should be grasped between forefinger and thumb. This is correct. I will talk about palming in a minute, but we don't palm these. So forefinger and thumb. The question is how forefinger and thumb, because if you've never fired one before, I mean, to me, it's obvious how you grip it because it's how I've always done it. But it's not a dainty little forefinger and thumb like that, because you're going to have a hard time. You need to grab it positively. And this is what I had to think about quite a lot on the range, just like, actually, how do I grab this? And the answer is between there and there. So it's in the angle of the thumb at the first joint above the bolt handle, and it's in the angle of the first joint of the first finger below, such that you can grasp it very, very solidly like that. And what this means is that you've got this angle doing the work when you bring it up, this angle doing the work as you bring it down, and the other one gives you control in each case. So let us just put the bolt back in. So the shot cycle, if we're going to fire 2 shots, would be bang, follow through. And we do follow through. You might not look like it when I'm going very fast, but I am following through. I'm letting the recoil finish. If you don't follow through, and this is why it's one of the 4 marksmanship principles, what can happen is you can start to advance yourself to the point where you've started breaking away actually before you've released the shot. It basically gives you a bit of a margin of error. So bang, go for the bolt handle and pull it up while pulling it back at the same time. Let's do that again. Bang, take it, pull up and back at the same time, and as soon as it clears, it's going to come back under its own will, or the will that you're putting into it. Now, let's just look at this a bit closer from here. It's very difficult working with a camera on my own. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling at about that angle. And as soon as the lugs are clear of the perpendicular locking surfaces, the bolt handle already starts to move back. And as soon as it clears, it comes back. You don't really have to think about it. It is not 4 movements. It is not up, back, forward, down. You can operate it like that, but you won't get any benefit from the slickness of the system if you do that, because you're wasting movement, and movement is time. So, bang. So it's open in one movement, and when you close it, it's also in one movement. Let's just do that in slow time. Again, forefinger and thumb. We've not let go. I'm pushing it forwards, and I'm going to start to push it down from about here, so that as I slam it forward, as soon as it clears, and the raceway for the little lug there that controls the primary extraction is curved, is at an angle, and in fact there's an entry angle for the long rib that is also curved. Now, and this is irrespective of whether we're shooting conventionally or with a middle finger. Now, we'll come back to the middle finger in a minute. So, bang. Where I wish I had a slow motion camera, but I don't. So, bang. And when I'm coming down, it's that angle of the thumb is pushing down on it. And it doesn't matter if it slips back, as it just did. If I lose control over it slightly, all that's going to happen is it's going to slip from there to there. And I've still got it under full control. I've still got it with my fingertip. So there's margin for losing control slightly when you're going forward in a soldierly fashion. As I like to say, it's not your girlfriend. They like to be run roughly. The actual 303 ones, because of the way the ejection works with the extractor and the extractor spring pushing the rim of the case against the left side wall of the receiver, if your 70-odd-year-old spring and extractor are a bit worn and a bit marginal, then they work better with a bit of positivity. And when you get to the back, there's no pause. Don't pause. So there's no point in pausing. There's no wasted time. You don't have to let it clear. In fact, again, if your ejection is a bit marginal on a 303 one, by reversing very quickly, almost as if it's a semi-auto, if there's any tendency for that case to want to drop back in, it'll kick it out. This is why sometimes when they're a bit marginal, when you do the last round before a reload, it'll drop it. It'll drop it and leave it in the on top of the mag, and you have to tip it or flick it away. But if you are positive about it, it will kick it out even if it's a bit marginal normally, unless it's really screwed, at which point just replace the broken parts. Don't whinge and moan about it. There's plenty of extractors, and there's even replacement extractor springs available from Wolf. Now, one thing you might have noticed there is that you're not seeing any influence of the coquillon closing that I'm pushing against the spring, which if you baby it, you feel it, and you end up being like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Basically, if you're feeling the spring, you're not working it in a soldierly enough like fashion. You really shouldn't feel it at all. You should be whacking so much force into it that you don't feel that spring. So let's talk about palming. Yes, palming does make sense with sticky out bolt handles, which are just awkward because if you grab them like that, you have to go and they're a pain. It makes no sense with this because it's right by the trigger. What it gives you with a sticky out bolt handle is more speed and a better hand position, but it reduces your control because you're open handing it. And plus, you've got to turn your hand around entirely at the back, which doesn't help. I mean, if you look at this, so even if I take a conventional shot, not a middle finger shot, That's it, minimize movement. There's almost no movement there. And then the hand comes back in the same position and I'm back on the trigger with minimum movement. And I can actually choose to middle finger it there, which on a practical range is only really of relevance with a very, very close-up shot where you can skimp a bit, you can sacrifice accuracy for speed. But I've got the choice here. When I've closed the bolt, I can either take it middle finger or I can come back for a conventional grip and take a good trigger press, and then minimum movement, I'm back on, whereas bang, I've got to move my hand a lot, and then it's awkward, and I've got to twist it and then down.
There remains the question of other techniques. Palming is one such that is mentioned in speculation. To me, this is the least efficient method available, as with it, the hand must move the most, and the fingers are not as close to the wrist and trigger as with other methods.
The only exception to this is if you get a sticky extraction, which gets the bolt to about here, and you can't apply enough force, at which point that will fix it. And then get it back under control properly. And the other thing is, if you've got marginal ammo as far as the rims are concerned, like some privy, and you've not loaded your charger clips asymmetrically, and you get one that goes in behind, you might find that you go but normally if you then slap it with the heel of your hand, it will go. And those are the only exceptions. It's basically if it's not playing ball, then you can open palm it up to get it extracted, or push through on your marginal rim damage. Don't try that with S&B with square rims, because they just no, it's just not going to work. It shouldn't be an issue with ammo with proper military rim radiuses, but then there's the stuff in between. There's some marginal commercial stuff that might, if given a little persuasion. So having said that, does this translate to other actions? And here's Tikka T3x Arctic, and the answer is actually, to a certain degree, yes. On a Lee-Enfield type, you've got 60 degrees bolt throw, and it starts to come back quite early. This has 70-degree bolt throw, and it does release there. But you can apply exactly the same principle here. It's just not quite as smooth because it doesn't start to come back from there. It takes a little longer. But the fact that you're already pulling back on it means that the force you're already applying, as soon as it releases, it's coming back on its own. And this rifle has had a few hundred rounds through it now, or quite a few hundred rounds through it now, and it's slicking up nicely. I'm looking forward to getting this down to Sion to do a proper close range mad minute with it. So let's have a chat now about some coaching tips for on the static range and also on the dynamic range. And my view is that there's no one size fits all. You should have a palette of techniques that you can choose from at the appropriate moment. And you should encourage good habits in yourself. And I'm going to talk about some things now that I need to work on that I'm not always so good at. So if you're on a static range, for instance, let's say I've just fired a shot. It didn't go so well. Oh, I'm going to drop. Oh. It's very, very easy to do. What I think is worth doing is, if you've still got ammo in the magazine, is to treat your shot cycle a bit like as if it's a semi-auto. Because with a semi-auto, you take the shot, you follow through, you recover from recoil, you reset the trigger and come back on it. So even if you're only firing one shot because it's a snap shoot or something like that, if you treat your shot cycle as bang, follow through, reload, and back on the target, you're instilling good practices that are going to mean that you're not going to accidentally drop the rifle down when you don't want to. And it's a classic thing that I see people do, which is that they're not minimizing the movement of the rifle between shots. So I was watching some footage from the Imperial Meeting civilian service rifle match, and there were people treating the administrative act of reloading as if it was a completely separate act. from shooting. So even when shooting rapid fire, shooting plates, things like that, there was quite a lot of bang going on. The less time you can spend on the administrative act of reloading and the less time you spend reacquiring the target, the more time you've got to spend on other things like correct sight picture and correct trigger pressing and following through. And people have pointed out on various match footage that I've put up that I'm calm. So bang, follow through, pop, pop. And you can use the recoil because on these the gun rises quite a lot. And it's as you're recovering from recoil, you recock it. The rifle shouldn't be waving around like that. It doesn't need to. Bang. And I think that's an important point to note. Now, if your magazine is empty and you're going to have to put a stripper clip in, obviously, bang, follow through, open, bring it down, go for the stripper clip. And this is where I get into a bit of a training scar with Frankenrifle because I'm so used to shooting these with stripper clips that with the AK mags, I end up doing the same thing when I don't really want to. So what I'm going to want to do with Frankenrifle is either take the shot, bang, change the mag, work the bolt, or if I'm on a practical range where I'm not shooting the mag to empty, I might want to take the shot, do the full shot cycle, then go for the reload. But I've got a bit of a training scar from stripper clips where I think I want to reload. So I'm going to shoot my shot, go for the reload like that. And I've wasted time, I've wasted movement. And also the bolt's no longer under control. So if I knock it while I'm reloading because I'm running or something and then I put the new magazine in, the first thing I've got to do is make sure that the bolt is fully back before I go forward. Now, if you're on a practical range, and I've shot this rifle in several practical events now, and certain of the things that you're going to do on the static range, like always come back onto the aim like that, you're not going to do. If you're going to take a shot and then immediately move position, you're not going to do that. If you're going to fire multiple shots from the same position, obviously, you're going to do that. But then, because you've got dead time while you're moving, you can then do the administrative act of working the bolt while you're moving. So fire a shot, that's what I was doing last weekend. Fire the shot, start to move, and then while I'm running, I can work the bolt from down here. The other thing that's important to note is to keep sufficient grip on the rifle to keep it under control, because while you're applying quite a lot of force here, you don't want the rifle moving all over the place. And actually the event organizer said that he managed to hurt both hands because he just wasn't used to holding a forend this tight and working a bolt like this with that sort of force. And it was fascinating to watch. He did really, really well. I was really very impressed because for someone who'd not shot a turn bolt before, he did really, really well indeed. So yeah, anyway, a bit rambly, but yeah, any other points I want to bring up? Oh, the other thing was I was managing to do sort of semi-auto techniques and holding it like that while I got up to move. That was surprisingly possible to do. I wasn't really necessarily expecting that. But yeah, so there you go. So I hope that was at least vaguely interesting to all that survived this far. Thank you very much for watching. If you're a patron, thank you so much for all your support that keeps the channel still chugging along at a 1 video a week rate. If you're not a patron yet, please consider becoming one because it really helps us a lot. If not, that's fine. Just like and subscribe, do all the usual thing, click the notification bell so that you see our videos, and see you again sometime. Bye.